President Donald Trump has reiterated his desire to annex the autonomous territory of Greenland from Denmark. Trump said today that he thinks it will happen, adding the U.S. needs Greenland for international security. Well, his comments are sure to have rubbed up NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte the wrong way. He was sat right beside him. The two sides holding talks at a time when Europe's security is on the line with the U.S.'s growing collision with Russia. Well, Trump has also been speaking on Putin's latest comments. The U.S. leader said the Russian president made a very promising statement. Well, let's take a listen to what Trump and Rutte have been saying.
On my first meeting, I noticed that we're getting words that things are going okay in Russia, and it doesn't mean anything until we hear what the final outcome is. But they have very serious discussions going on right now with President Putin and others, and hopefully they all want to end this nightmare. So we hopefully are going to be in a good position sometime today to have a good idea. We know where we are with Ukraine, and we are getting good signals outside of Russia as to where we are with Russia, and hopefully they'll do the right thing.
Also discuss defense production because we need to produce more weaponry. We are not doing enough. And not in the US, not in Europe, and we are lacking behind when you compare to the Russians and the Chinese. And you have a huge defense industrial base. Europeans buying 4 times more here than the other way around, which is good because you have a strong defense industry, but we need to do more there to make sure that we ramp up the production and kill the red tape. So I would love to work with you on that.
Well, let's speak to David Smith now. He's the Guardian's Washington bureau chief. David, good to have you. Just lay out for us what was said about Russia and Ukraine, particularly during that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump overall welcomed the latest developments. He said, what Vladimir Putin responded was positive, but he also said it was not quite the complete statement he was looking for. He said he's very happy to talk to Putin about moving the situation forward, and will certainly be disappointed if the Russians don't comply with this. I think it illustrated that there's been an interesting shift here after weeks of criticizing Ukraine and even describing President Zelensky as a dictator. Now the pressure is on Putin and Russia to comply, and as Secretary of State Mark Rubio said, the ball is in their court. It's going to be an interesting test of the Trump-Putin relationship, which we've seen for years appears to be close, and Trump has been much criticized for that. Now comes the big test. Will all that diplomacy pay off, and will Putin make a concession? Certainly in Putin's response, again, it was a bit of a mixed bag. He suggested he was fine with this ceasefire in principle, but he certainly had a lot of questions to ask, and he made some ominous remarks about in a long-term peace deal wanting to address the root causes of this crisis, which I think will alarm some in Europe in terms of what he meant by that. So it still feels very provisional, very up in the air. We know U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is potentially meeting Putin in Moscow relatively soon, today or tomorrow. I think it's now a case of watch this space.
And meanwhile, there was that awkward moment during the meeting when Trump said that the U.S. annexation, a potential annexation of Greenland, will happen. Of course, Rutte was sat right next to him. Denmark is a NATO member. How will Rutte handle Trump's expansionist views?
Yeah, I mean, really extraordinary, the age that we're living in, that these conversations happen in public. And we've had a succession of foreign leaders from King Hussein of Jordan to Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, and most infamously Vladimir Zelensky, of course, all put on the spot with the media watching as Donald Trump makes highly unconventional, norm-shattering remarks. And you always wonder how these world leaders going to respond. A journalist asked Donald Trump a couple of questions about his plans to annex Greenland, and Trump said it will happen. And he even sort of half joked, it seemed, about sending more troops to Greenland. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. He turned to his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, and said, don't answer that one, Pete. Pretty bizarre and difficult for a head of NATO to respond. And Mark Rutte, interestingly, tackled it head on. He said very clearly NATO is not going to have any part in the future of Greenland, and that's not a matter for NATO. But he did then praise Donald Trump for raising this national and international security issue about the future of Greenland, how China especially is using the shipping lanes there, how it could fall under the Russian sphere of influence. He was grateful to Trump for at least highlighting that issue, and that really fitted a pattern of the way Rutte played the whole meeting. He praised Trump at every opportunity, for example, on his dealings with North Korea and certainly Ukraine and in other areas. And in that sense, I think he was using the Macron and Starmer playbook. You feed Donald Trump lots of compliments, and then occasionally you also stand up to him.
David, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed there. David Smith reporting live there from Washington. Well, let's get you the latest